Hello and welcome to this edition of World at War. My name is Mohammed Saleh. The unprecedented Ukrainian drone attacks targeting Russia's nuclear bombers at a time when Donald Trump was flogging negotiations for a ceasefire deal means that all bets are now off. There is no red line, perhaps, that will now not be crossed. By destroying Russia's nuclear bombers, what Ukraine has demonstrated that its will to fight, despite 3 years of this bruising war, has not ended. It has shown that Ukraine is willing to go up the escalatory ladder in a manner that no one anticipates. But this sophisticated attack has also thrown up a number of different questions. The chief among them being, could Ukraine, which is so heavily reliant on American weapons to fight this war, have carried out this attack without the complicity, if not the active participation of the United States? Did the American president know that this attack was coming? And if he did, does this mean that all negotiations for a ceasefire are now off? What has been hit are not just Russian air bases and its nuclear bombers. The prestige of Vladimir Putin has taken a beating, and Putin has vowed to respond. But how exactly will Russia respond to this Ukrainian attack? Our next poll gets you the details. The dead hand is a Soviet-era doctrine, also called the perimeter system. It ensures that even in the eventuality of the Western nations overwhelming the Russian defenses and striking it with nuclear weapons, and even if Russia's nuclear command has been decapitated, the semi-automatic or automatic nuclear weapons control system will initiate the launch of Russia's nuclear intercontinental ballistic missiles on predefined targets, ensuring mutually assured destruction. This dead hand program is what will come to wipe out the West, even if everyone in Russia has been killed in a preemptive nuclear strike. The Americans also have a similar program called the ANDRC-8, which can do the same thing if the Russians in a preemptive nuclear strike take out the American nuclear command. But why is Russia's dead hand doctrine back in focus? The daring and the extremely complex attack by Ukraine, using drones to take out 41 of Russia's warplanes, including several of its nuclear bombers across 4 air bases, thousands of miles from the Ukrainian territory, has set off every alarm bell in Kremlin. If Russia's nuclear bombers can be attacked and destroyed in a conventional war, then almost anything can come under attack.
At the same time they ask for ceasefire for 30 or 60 days. They ask for a summit. But how is it possible to make such meetings in these conditions? What is there to talk about? How can we negotiate with those who rely on terror, with terrorists? Why should we encourage them by giving them a pause in fighting? This pause would be used to pump them up with Western weapons, to continue a forced mobilization, and to prepare other acts of terrorism similar to those which had been carried out in Bryansk and Kursk region.
Speculation is rife that Russia could resort to the use of its Oreshnik missile to strike back at Ukraine. Oreshnik, that was first used by Russia on the 21st of November last year, according to Vladimir Putin, has blurred the lines between nuclear and conventional weapons, as the missile vaporizes anything at the point where it strikes. In his meeting with the German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, Donald Trump put out his new strategy for the Ukraine war. Instead of pushing for a ceasefire, he now claims he wants Russia and Ukraine to fight it out a bit more.
That's a bloodbath that's going on over there. And when I see the moment where I say, well, they're going to just keep fighting. You know, I gave the analogy yesterday when I spoke to President Putin. I had a 2-hour and 15-minute call with him. Sometimes, and this is me speaking maybe in a negative sense, but sometimes you see 2 young children fighting like crazy. They hate each other and they're fighting in a park. and you try and pull them apart. They don't want to be pulled. Sometimes you're better off letting them fight for a while and then pulling them apart. And I gave that analogy to Putin yesterday. I said, President, maybe you're going to have to keep fighting and suffering a lot, because both sides are suffering, before you pull them apart, before they're able to be pulled apart. But it's a pretty known analogy. You have two kids, they fight. Sometimes you let them fight for a little while.
What this effectively means is that the ceasefire negotiations have been put on the back burner. In the span of the last week, Russia and Ukraine have lashed at each other with repeated drone and missile attacks. But an unwritten red line has been crossed, and almost no escalation is now out of the ambit of the Ukraine war, where the needle is slowly and very subtly turning towards nuclear. The crippling siege imposed by Israel on the Gaza Strip has reduced the Palestinian occupied territory to the hungriest place on earth. Human rights organizations have described the levels of hunger in the Gaza Strip to be catastrophic. And amidst this, there are damning reports that have come of the Israelis opening fire at aid distribution sites that has resulted in the deaths of the starving Palestinians who had lined up to get some food for their families. In a war that has now dragged on for more than 20 long months, more than 54,000 Palestinians have been killed, and more than 120,000 Palestinians, an overwhelming majority of whom are women and children, have suffered serious injuries resulting in amputations. Israel has reduced more than 90% of all buildings in the Gaza Strip to rubble, but it has still, surprisingly, not managed to get its hostages released from the custody of Hamas. What other military objectives has Israel left to achieve in the Gaza Strip? Why are the starving Palestinians who are lining up at aid centers for food being shot at and killed? And more importantly, what raised hand has vetoed a ceasefire in the Gaza Strip for the 5th straight time, while every other nation voted for a ceasefire in Gaza at the UNSC? Our next report gets you the details.
Allahu Akbar.
It is a cheerless Eid al-Azha in the Gaza Strip. At a mosque that has been bombed and reduced to rubble by Israel. The Palestinians, young and old, gathered with their prayer mats to offer their Eid prayers. Eid is a time of celebration, but for the starving Palestinians who've been living under a hail of bombs in the Gaza Strip, there is no celebration. What is all around them is a scene of almost complete desolation. For the last 20 months, Israel has repeatedly given evacuation orders, telling the Palestinians to flee from their homes, from one refugee camp to another. And this scene from Khan Yunis will give you a glimpse of what the Palestinians have been doing for the last 20 months. Fleeing from one corner of Gaza to another in search of safety. But safety is the one thing that is not to be found in the Gaza Strip. Day after day, week after week, and month after month, the Israeli onslaught has continued. Hospitals in Gaza are overwhelmed. The steady stream of patients who've sustained life-threatening injuries never ends. Hamdi al-Najjar, a doctor by profession, was at his home in Khan Yunis when Israel dropped a bomb on them. 10 children of his family were killed in just this one attack. Hamdi al-Najjar, who survived the initial attack, was put in the intensive care unit at the Nasser hospital. But a couple of days later, this Palestinian doctor also breathed his last from the pain of the injuries sustained in the attack. Mass funeral prayers have become the norm in Gaza. But it isn't just the Israeli bombs that are killing the people. The catastrophic hunger the Palestinians have been subjected to has brought international condemnation.
Willful impediment of access to food and other life-sustaining relief supplies for civilians may constitute a war crime. The threat of starvation, together with 20 months of killing of civilians and destruction on a massive scale, repeated forced displacements, intolerable, dehumanising rhetoric and threats by Israel's leadership to empty the Strip of its population, also constitute elements of the most serious crimes under international law.
The Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, the American and Israeli aid initiative, has come under a lot of criticism over the manner of its aid distribution. The shooting of the hungry Palestinians by the Israeli military at an aid distribution site is resulting in some damning reports, even in the American press. A British surgeon who treated the Palestinians brought to the hospital with gunshot wounds that they sustained at the aid center described the attack on the Palestinians who had gathered to collect food to be nothing less than a carnage.
So it's Sunday, it's the 1st of June. It's about 10:30, 11 in the morning. I'm in the emergency department at the NASA complex. We've had a shooting at the GHF Aid Distribution Center near Rafah. A lot of the injured people were taken to the local field hospitals, we think to ICRC, but we have had an extortionate amount of people come through the door. At the moment, the locals are quoting anything from 200 to possibly 100 injured people. These are all gunshot wounds, and as you can see behind me, we've got all the bays are full and they're all gunshot wounds. It's absolute carnage here, and there are even more people in the main emergency department.
On the 5th of June, the United States again vetoed a Security Council resolution demanding for an immediate ceasefire in the Gaza Strip and for the immediate lifting of all restrictions of humanitarian aid. The resolution won the support of 14 out of the 15 members of the Council, and only the United States of America, which holds a veto power, voted against a ceasefire for the Gaza Strip.
Those against? Abstentions?
On the 27th of May, in a major leap for India's indigenous defence capabilities, the Indian Defence Minister Rajnath Singh approved the execution model for the ambitious Advanced Medium Combat Aircraft, or the AMCA program. The 5th generation stealth fighter jet project, to be led by the Aeronautical Development Agency, or the ADA, aims to elevate the Indian Air Force into the much coveted elite club of next generation aerial combat nations. The project is designed to produce medium-weight, deep-penetration stealth aircraft that will operate alongside the existing Tejas light combat aircraft, thereby forming the core of India's aerial strike power in the coming decades. Our next poll gets you the details.
Amid increasing military cooperation between China and Pakistan, especially in the backdrop of military confrontation under Operation Sindoor, India approved the Advanced Medium Combat Aircraft, or AMCA, its first indigenously built 5th generation stealth fighter jet.
साथियों, आपको जानकर यह खुशी होगी कि रक्षा क्षेत्र में सेल्फ रिलायंस, आत्मनिर्भरता को बढ़ावा देने के लिए अभी 2 दिन पहले एमका प्रोजेक्ट को, जो 5th जनरेशन फाइटर एयरक्राफ्ट भारत में ही बनाने का प्रोजेक्ट है, उसको आगे बढ़ाने की एग्जीक्यूशन मॉडल को मंजूरी दे दी।
The announcement, amid regional tensions, marks a decisive response and a strategic leap in pursuit of self-reliance in aerospace industrial ecosystem. The AMCA is, for all intents and purposes, more than just a jet. It is India's answer to stealth-heavy fifth-generation warfare. The AMCA is a 25-ton twin-engine stealth multi-role fighter featuring cutting-edge stealth design, sensor fusion and advanced avionics. It is engineered for both deep penetration strike missions as well as air dominance roles. With a total payload of 1,500 kilograms, the jet can carry up to 4 long-range air-to-air missiles and several precision-guided munitions internally. The AMCA project, the country's only fifth-generation fighter program, had received approval from the Cabinet Committee on Security in March 2024 at an approximate cost of 15,000 crore rupees as a 25-ton twin-engine stealth aircraft. With first operational AMCA jet set to be delivered by 2035, India will join an elite list of nations with fifth-generation fighter jets, which includes United States' F-35 Lightning II, Russian Sukhoi Su-57 and Chinese Chengdu J-20 fighter jet. How does AMCA compare to these rival fifth-generation fighter jets? With AMCA's design focused on stealth, AI integration and seamless UAV coordination, it is believed that India, though late to the fifth-generation game, is expected to match, if not exceed, certain capabilities of its rivals through indigenous innovation and selective foreign collaboration.
In a case of kidnapping and murder that has sent shockwaves through the Latin American nation of Mexico, suspected drug traffickers killed 4 members of a local musical band called Grupo Fugitivo and their manager, whose bodies were discovered on the 29th of May in Tamaulipas state, 4 days after the men were reported missing. Reportedly, their relatives had received ransom demands in the days following the men's disappearance. So far, the Mexican police have arrested about 12 suspects in total in connection with the murder of the members of Grupo Fugitivo, though it remains unclear as to why the local band members were targeted in this manner. Our next report gets you more details.
In Mexico, some musical bands, early in their career, rely on income from being hired to play at private parties, many of which are hosted by people involved in or with connections to the drug cartels. At times, these bands also compose songs praising drug lords, which sometimes in the past has not gone down well with rival gangs, who have threatened and even killed singers of such songs, known as corridos. In violence-racked Tamaulipas state, though kidnappings for ransom are not uncommon, the manner in which the musical band Grupo Fugitivo, known for playing norteña music, were apparently lured to an abandoned lot in the border city of Reynosa by their kidnappers with the promise of a gig at a private party, were abducted and then taken by their captors to a property where they were killed, has shocked locals.
The first investigations established that the members of the musical group were kidnapped around 10 p.m. on Sunday, May 25th, when they were traveling in a black GMC van to a private event in the Riberas del Rio neighborhood in the city of Reynosa, Tamaulipas, for which they had been previously hired.
En la colonia Riberas del Río, en la ciudad de Reynosa, Tamaulipas, en la continuidad de las investigaciones.
In the continuity of the investigations, supported by the C5 video surveillance systems and telephone analysis, it was established that after the kidnapping, they were transferred to a property.
Posteriormente a la privación y al momento existen elementos.
At the moment, there are elements that allow us to presume that this is the place where they were unfortunately killed.
Fueron privados de la vida.
Cracking down, the Mexican police has detained 12 suspects including a man known by the alias of M47, who is suspected of ordering the murder of members of the band Grupo Fugitivo. M47 was arrested during raids on 3 properties in which the Mexican police also seized drugs, weapons, cash and suspicious vehicles. M47 is suspected of being one of the bosses of a gang known as Metros, which forms part of the Gulf Cartel. The Gulf Cartel, designated by the Trump administration as a global terrorist organization, has its stronghold in Tamaulipas state and engages in the smuggling of drugs and migrants across the US-Mexico border, as well as kidnapping for ransom. In January, the US Embassy in Mexico had issued a Level 4 travel advisory, the highest level, warning its citizens not to travel to several Mexican cities, including the city of Reynosa. The risk of crime and kidnapping and frequent gun battles occurring in and around the city was cited as reasons for the advisory, though it remains uncertain if the Grupo Fugitivo were targeted because of their music or were unfortunately caught up in the spiral of violence that has long plagued the state of Tamaulipas. The shocking incident is a reminder that Mexico continues to be one of the most dangerous countries in the world.
More than 30 soldiers were killed in an attack on a military base in central Mali on the 1st of June. The Al-Qaeda-linked jihadist group Jamaat Nusratul Islam wal Muslimin, or JNIM, active in West Africa's Sahel region, claimed responsibility for the attack. The Malian military, without giving any casualty numbers, has said that it had been forced to pull back, albeit after a dogged defense, during which some of its soldiers fought until their last breath. The very next day, the jihadist group claimed to have targeted a military airport and Russian mercenaries in the northern city of Timbuktu as well. Since the beginning of last month, more than 400 soldiers have been killed by insurgents in military bases and towns of Mali, Niger and Burkina Faso, an unstable region that is prone to coups. Our next report gets more details.
The impoverished West African nation of Mali has been wrestling with insecurity since 2012. Al-Qaeda and Islamic State-linked groups, as well as self-declared defense forces and bandits, have racked Mali for over a decade, accusing the government of failing to do enough to quell the insurgency. The military had seized power in a coup in 2021, but repeated jihadist attacks in the embattled nation has put question marks on the military's ability to rein in insurgents. On Sunday, militants on motorbikes overran the military base in Bukesi near the border with Burkina Faso. Blood trails and billowing black smoke narrated a tale of violent confrontation. Though, in keeping with its practice of not divulging details, the Malian army refrained from releasing any casualty figures. In Timbuktu, the next day, the assailants hit multiple positions with heavy gunfire and shelling. Reportedly, the panic-stricken residents took cover from explosions and gunfire by locking themselves in their homes before relative calm returned to the city. The Malian army claimed the same afternoon that the situation was under control and that 13 jihadists had been killed. Given the scale of the assault and the immediate claims by the jihadist group, analysts are of the opinion that this was a long-term and carefully planned attack. The jihadist group has claimed a host of recent attacks in the region. On the 24th of May, it claimed to have attacked a base in Dioura, in central Mali, killing 40 soldiers. And last Friday, it said it had seized a base in Sira Korola in southwestern Mali, although the army said it had repelled the attack, though it did not provide a toll for that incident either. Under the leadership of junta leader General Assimi Goïta, Mali broke a long-standing alliance with European partners and former colonial power France, and brought in Russia's Wagner group to help fight the jihadists, but there is no sign of the jihadist insurgency ending. Even more embarrassing is the fact that these repeated attacks have come after junta leader Assimi Goïta had claimed that his army had considerably weakened armed terrorist groups. At a time when the Malian army has pledged to regain control of the entire country, these twin militant attacks on a military base and military airport have put a big question mark on such boasts.
And with that, it's a wrap on this edition of World at War. And if you want to reach out to me with any comments, feedback or suggestions, please feel free to do so on the ID that you're seeing on your screens. I'm your host, Mohammed Saleh, and I'll see you again next week.